So this is called The Last Straw, and it is a true story. Give me that, it's mine. It's not Fatso, I had it first. Mom sighed. It was another long winter afternoon with everyone stuck in the house, and the four little McDonalds were at it again, bickering and teasing and fighting over their toys. Lately, the lively little bunch had been particularly horrible to one another, especially Eric and Kelly, who were just a year apart. The two of them in particular seemed determined to spend the whole winter making each other miserable. With Christmas less than a month away, the McDonald house seemed sadly lacking in Christmas spirit. This was supposed to be the season of sharing and love, of warm feelings and happy hearts. But where were those warm feelings and happy hearts? A home needed more than just pretty packages and twinkling lights on the tree to fill it with Christmas spirit. How could a mother convince her children that being kind to one another was the most important way to get ready for Christmas? Mom had an idea. She gathered the four little rascals together and sat them down on the stairs, smallest to tallest, Mike, Randy, Kelly, and Eric. How would you kids like to start a new Christmas project? It's like a game, but it can only be played by people who can keep a secret. Can anyone here do that? I can, shouted Eric, waving his arms wildly. I can keep a secret better than you, Kelly said, jumping up and down, waving her arms. I can do it, chimed in Randy. She wasn't quite sure what was happening, but she knew she didn't want to be left out. Me too, squealed little Mike, bouncing up and down. Wonderful, exclaimed Mom. Here's how the game works. This year, we're going to surprise baby Jesus when he comes on Christmas Eve by making him the softest bed in the world. We're going to build a little crib for him to sleep in right here in our house and fill it with straw to make it comfortable. The straw we put in the manger will be measured by all kinds of things we do between now and Christmas. But here's the secret. We can't let anyone see us doing good deeds. But who will we be doing these things for? Asked Eric. We'll be doing them for each other, Mom explained. Each week between now and Christmas, we'll put all the names in this hat, mine and Daddy's too. Then we'll each draw the name for the whole week and we'll do things for them. But here's the hard part. We can't tell anyone whose name we drew. Like a spy, squealed Randy. I could do that. I'm a good spy. Mom said each week we'll try to do as many favors for one special person that we can and not get caught. And for each good thing we do, we'll put a straw in the crib. Then on Christmas Eve, we'll put baby Jesus in his little bed, and he'll sleep that night on a nice bed that we have made of love. I think he'd like that, don't you? The children nodded. Now, who will build a little crib for us? Mom asked. Eric was the oldest and the only one allowed to use tools, so he marched off to the basement. There we heard banging noises and sawing noises, and for a long time there was no noises at all. Eric climbed back up out of the stairs with a proud smile. The best crib in the world, he grinned, and I did it all myself. For once everyone agreed. The little manger was the best crib in the world, even though one leg was an inch too short and the crib rocked a bit. But it had been built with love and about 100 bent nails, so it would certainly last a long time. Now we need straw, said Mom, and together they tumbled out into the car to look for some. Surprisingly, no one fought over who was going to be sitting next to the window as they were searching for his grassy field. At last, they spotted a small empty lot that had been covered with tall grass in the summer. Now, the dried yellow stalks looked just like straw. Mom stopped the car, and even though it was a bitter cold, the kids scrambled out to start picking handfuls of the tall grass. That's enough, Mom finally laughed, when the cardboard box in the trunk was almost full. It was overflowing. Remember, it's only a small crib. So home they went and spread the small straw carefully on the table in the kitchen. The empty manger was placed gently on top, and no one could even notice that it had 1 inch leg that was shorter than the other. When can we pick names? Shouted the children, their faces still rosy from the cold. as soon as Daddy comes back from Grandpa's house. At the supper table that night, the 6 names were written on separate pieces of paper, folded and tossed into the old baseball hat. Then the drawing began. Kelly picked her name first and started to giggle. Randy reached into the hat next, trying hard to look like a serious spy. Daddy glanced at his scrap of paper and smiled quietly behind his hand, and Mom picked out a name, but her face never gave a clue as to who she drew. Next came little Mike, reached into the hat, but since he couldn't read, Daddy had to whisper in his ear. Mike then quickly ate the scrap of paper so no one could hear or see who he had drawn. Eric was the last to choose, and as he unfolded his piece of paper, he frowned came across his face, but he stuffed the name into his pocket and said nothing. The family was ready to begin. The next week was filled with all kinds of surprises. It seemed the McDonald house had suddenly been invaded by an army of invisible elves, and good things seemed to happen everywhere. Kelly would walk into the room at bedtime and find her little blue nightgown neatly laid out and her bed turned down. Someone cleaned up the sawdust under Daddy's workbench without being asked. The jelly blobs disappeared magically from the kitchen counter after lunch one day while Mom was getting the mail. And every morning, while Eric was brushing his teeth, someone crept quietly into his room and made his bed. It was made perfectly, but it wasn't made perfectly, but it was made. That particular little elf must have been very short, because his arms couldn't reach across to make the bed properly. "Where are my shoes?" asked Daddy one morning. No one seemed to know, but before he left for work, there they were back in the closet, all shined up. Mom noticed other things that week too. The children weren't teasing or fighting as much. Even Eric and Kelly seemed to be getting along better. In fact, every now and then, each of the children would be giggling and smiling secret smiles. And slowly, one by one, pieces of straw began to appear in the little crib. At first, there was just a few, but then a few more appeared each day. By the end of the first week, there was actually a little pile in the crib. Now, mind you, no one ever saw the straws go in, but later the children could be seen patting and testing the tiny pile of softness. Before Sunday, everyone was anxious to pick new names again, and this time there was more laughter and merriment during the picking process than had been the week before, except for Eric. Once again, he unfolded his slip of paper, looked at it, and stuffed it in his pocket without a word. Mom noticed, as moms always do, but said nothing. The second week brought more amazing events, and the little pile of straw grew higher and softer. Everyone seemed to be watching and checking it carefully each day. With only 2 weeks left until Christmas, the children wondered if their homemade bed would be comfortable enough for baby Jesus. "There is one more thing we need to do to get ready for Christmas Eve," Mom announced on the third Sunday after we had all picked the names. "We need to find a baby Jesus for our manger." "What can we use?" "Maybe we can use one of our toys," suggested Randy. The children ran off to gather up their favorite dolls and stuffed animals. When they came back, they all lined them up on the couch. Only an old baby doll, which had been loved almost to pieces, looked like it could possibly be for baby Jesus. Wisps of blonde hair stuck out of his head all over, making her look a little lost and forlorn. But her eyes were still bright blue and still smiled, even though her face was slightly smudged from all the touch of so many little chubby fingers. "I think she's perfect," said Mom. "When baby Jesus was born, he probably didn't have much hair either, and I'll bet he'd like to be represented by a doll who had been loved and hugged so much." So it was decided the children began to make new outfits for baby Jesus, a little leather vest out of scraps and a diaper out of a dish towel, because none of them really knew what swaddling clothes were supposed to look like. But baby Jesus looked just fine in his new clothes, and best of all, he fit perfectly into the little crib. Since it was not quite Christmas yet, the doll had been laid carefully on a shelf in the closet, waiting for Christmas Eve in a softer bed. Meanwhile, the pile of straw grew and grew. Every day brought new and different surprises as the secret elves stepped up to their activities. There were more laughter, less teasing, and hardly any meanness around the house. The McDonald home was feeling quite Christmassy, except only Eric was unusually quiet, and sometimes Mom would catch him looking a little sad and unhappy, but the straw in the manger continued to pile up. At last it was almost Christmas. The final Sunday night of name-picking was at the Christmas Eve. As the family sat around the table once more, Mom, you've all done wonderful jobs. There must be hundreds of straws in the manger, maybe 1,000. You should be so pleased and proud of yourselves we've made this bed. But remember, there's still one day left. We have all the time to do a little more to make the bed even softer before tomorrow night. The children smiled as they looked at the fluffy pile of straw. No one needed to test it anymore. They all knew it was comfortable and soft. But maybe they could make it just a little deeper, a little softer. They were going to try. For the last time, the hat had been passed around the table. Little Mike picked out a name. Daddy whispered his name. Then Mike quickly ate the paper again. Randy unfolded hers carefully under the table, peeking at it, and then hunched her little shoulders, smiling. Kelly reached into the hat and giggled happily as she drew the names. Mom and Daddy each took their turn, and then Dad handed the last name to Eric. But as Eric unfolded a small piece of paper and read it, his face pinched up, and without a word, he stood and ran from the room. Everyone jumped up from the table, but Mom stopped them. No, stay here, stay where you are. Let me go talk to him alone. Just as she reached the top of the stairs, Eric's door banged open, and then a small suitcase in one hand and was trying to pull the coat on his other. I'll have to leave, he mumbled quietly through his tears. If I don't, I'll spoil Christmas for everyone. But why? Why are you going? Asked Mom. Where are you going? I can sleep in the snow fort for a couple of days. I'll come home right after Christmas, I promise. Mom started to say something about freezing and snow and no mittens and no boots, but Dad, standing just beside her, put his arms on her and shook his head. The front door closed, and together they watched him from the window as the little figure with the sadly slumped shoulders and no hat trudged across the street and sat down on the snowbank near the corner. It was very dark outside and cold, and the snow flurries came. But he'll freeze, Mom said. Give him a few minutes alone, then go talk to him. The huddled figure was already dusted with snow. 10 minutes later, when Mom walked across the street and sat down beside him in the snowbank. What is it, Eric? You've been so good all this last weeks, but I know something's been bothering you, and since we first started started the manger, can you tell me why? Ah, Mom, don't you see, he sniffled. I tried so hard, but I can't do it anymore, and now I'm going to wreck it for everyone. With that, he burst into tears and sobbed and threw himself into his mom's arms. But I don't understand, Mom said, brushing the tears from her face. What can't you do? And how can you possibly spoil Christmas for us? Mom, the little boy choked, you don't know. I got Kelly's name again, all 4 times. I just can't be nice to her anymore or I'll die. I tried, Mom, I really did. I snuck into her room every night and fixed her bed. I even laid her crummy nightgown out. And one day I let her use my race car, but she smashed it right into the wall like she always does. I tried to be nice to her, Mom, even when she saw that the crib leg was too short and called me a dummy for that. I didn't hit her. Every week when we picked names, I thought it would be over. But tonight, when I got her name again, I knew I couldn't do any more nice things for her. Mom, I just can't. If I try, I'll probably punch her instead. And tomorrow's Christmas Eve. If I beat up Kelly, I'll spoil everything for everybody. And we've already put baby Jesus to the crib. Don't you see why I have to leave? They sat together quiet for a few moments, Mom's arm around Eric's shoulders. Finally, Mom spoke silently. Eric, I'm so proud of you. Even every good thing you did should count double because it was especially hard for you to do nice things for Kelly. For so long, you gave your love when it wasn't easy to give. Maybe that's what the spirit of Christmas is all about. You're the one who's probably added the most important straws to the crib, and you can be proud of yourself. Now, how would you like the chance to earn a few more straws like the rest of us? I still have not picked the name out of my pocket, and I don't even know whose name I've got. Why don't we switch? Just for the last day, it'll be our secret. Isn't that cheating? It's not cheating, Mom smiled, and she took the slip of paper out of her pocket and handed it to him. Together they dried their tears, brushed off the snow, and walked back to the house. The next day, the whole family was busy cooking and straightening up the house for Christmas Day, wrapping last-minute presents, and trying hard to keep from bursting with excitement. But even with all the activity and eagerness, a flurry of new straws piled up in the manger, and by nightfall, it was almost overflowing. At different times while passing, each member of the family, big and small, would pause and look at the wonderful pile of straw for a moment, then smile before going on. At last, it was almost time for the tiny crib to be used. But who could really know? One straw might make the difference. For that very reason, just before midnight, Mom tiptoed quietly to Kelly's room to lay out the little blue nightgown and turn down the bed. But she stopped in the doorway, surprised. Someone had already been there. The nightgown was laid out across the bed, and a small red race car rested on the pillow. The last straw was Eric's. So this is a true story. So what did this tell you? But this tells you that being kind to your siblings, to your brothers and your sisters, is the best gift you can give Jesus and your mom and dad. Did you hear that? They said amen. So now Cheryl has something for you.
I love chocolate.